In terms of the separations of the four parts of the spinal cord, the cervical is about goes from the foramen magnum to like half of the cervical expansion. Then you have the thoracic portion of spinal cord, and then you have lumbar, about halfway from here to here, thoracic, lumbar, and then that medullary cone, conus medullaris, in that area is the sacrococcygeal. In terms of the number of spinal nerves, we said that there are 30 vertebral bones. 7 plus 12 plus 5 plus 5 plus 1 coccyx. There are 31 spinal nerves. So the reason for this is because there are 8 cervical spinal nerves, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral, and 1 coccygeal, coccyx. But instead of 7 cervical, there's 8 cervical spinal nerves. There's 7 cervical vertebral bones, but 8 cervical spinal nerves, and that is responsible for making the number of spinal nerves one higher than the number of vertebral bones. There are two structures here called the sympathetic trunk that run a chain of nerves that run along the two sides of the vertebral column. So you can imagine the vertebral column runs here, the spinal cord is inside the vertebral column, and outside the vertebral column on two sides are the sympathetic trunks. Okay? So here, these two. They run the length of the vertebral column from about the level of cervical level down to the sacrum, but not all the way to the bottom of the sacrum, just about midway to the sacrum. Okay, and now these sympathetic trunks, they have two connections, and they connect to this, to the anterior primary ramus. So there's your posterior primary ramus, anterior primary ramus, and you can tell the rest here. The two connections are called the gray and white rami communicans, or ramus communicans. The one most medial, that's the white ramus communicans, and the one lateral is the gray ramus communicans. Okay, and the two ramus communicans connect the spinal nerve to a structure of the sympathetic trunk called the sympathetic ganglion. So you can see there's like an expansion here. Sympathetic trunk has these expansions. Those are the sympathetic ganglia, and those ganglia connect to the spinal nerve via the gray and white ramus communicans. In terms of this part of the cross section of the spinal cord, we said that's the white matter and the inside is the gray matter. The posterior roots and rootlets and the posterior root ganglion is always sensory, only sensory. The anterior roots and rootlets are always motor. They carry out the action, so signals will go out through them, signals come in through the posterior roots and go out through the anterior roots. Here, for the rest of the spinal nerve, anterior and posterior primary ramus and the sympathetic trunk, the two fibers intermingle, and so this part is mixed, contains both. But once they get to these two, only motor goes out here and sensory information comes back in. And in terms of the gray and white matter, the gray matter, the posterior horns are sensory, anterior horns are motor, and the column, the white matter, also. Posterior columns sensory, anterior column motor. Okay, so we will talk about what's in the white and gray matter later.